Hello, I'm Jay Antoine Shade, a teacher within Gwinnett County Public Schools, also a student at the University of West Georgia in the Education Specialist Program for Secondary Biology. Today, I would like to talk to you about the ESOL population and how the ESOL population is represented in my classroom, some of my thoughts about how we can increase student achievement within the ESOL population, and just some reflective thoughts on the articles that were read in this week's assignment. All right, just a disclaimer, all pictures of students that you see, parents did sign a waiver for educational purposes, publicity of our program, and any educational general uses. All right, so the ESOL population in my classroom. So I teach accelerated math and science at the middle school level. And this picture that you see is 11 of my students, 11 out of 64 students, actually going on to the county science fair, sweeping our schools. Competitive science fair. So these students, we went through a process of talking about quantitative and qualitative data. I know that sounds crazy for a middle school to be discussing, but the academic rigor is there. So, about 25% of our population in the STEAM Academy of 64 students are currently receiving ESOL services. I am a ESOL endorsed teacher, and they receive their ESOL services through me. And the model that we use here at our school is almost like a cohort model. Um, I appreciate you listening to the ESOL journey within my classroom. So the one thing that's extremely important to me and validates through research is language through oral expressions. So when students are learning something, the very first thing that I make sure that the students are doing is communicating those ideas before we even get them on paper or they read about it, because we know that oral expression is key to language development. So, just the some thoughts about the Fillmore article is that um, the most effective method of helping students learn the language needed for text understanding at this level is through instructional conversations focused on the materials that they're introduced in class. So, for an example, we can show students a model of balancing equations through with radicals. Well, do students understand the academic language that is associated with that, and are they able to talk to their peers effectively through this? So I think as a teacher, oral expression is key through language development for ESOL students. Um, Something that we can get better at my school is actually understanding that the language development takes between 5 to 7 years. So I remember about 3 years ago, I had a student and their family came into the United States from Venezuela. They've been there, I'm sorry, to the United States for about a week. They were a seventh grader. So if you take that student that is um, brand new to the country, does not know the English language, and it takes them 7 years to develop, they will um, actually be graduating high school and enter into post-secondary programs before they even develop the academic language that is associated and needed for higher level um, content areas. So ELs are being exposed to two types of communication, social and academic. The social part is important, and that is that I like to call the lunchroom table conversation. Are they able to communicate? And usually the social vocabulary actually comes first before the academic, because the social are more frequent conversations that they'll use compared to the academic language when we talk about, like, for an example, hypertonic solution. Um, in science, photosynthesis, cellular respiration, protein synthase, etc. So those words are not used throughout commonly and frequently throughout the language. So it may take them a while. Um, One thing that we can get better at our school, and we actually talked about this with the administration, is that some of our students come to our country and come into our program uh, not being literate in the language that not being literate in their first language. So that actually slows down their language progression of the English language. So our being that our school is predominantly Latino or Hispanic, our principal has decided that next year we will actually have a Spanish class for our Spanish learners that really focuses on their literacy within their native language. And hopefully, we'll see trends of their English language progression actually increasing. So this is important, especially for secondary teachers. Sometimes secondary teachers are like content first, and then language, and then you'll have the some ESOL teachers or ESOL um, teachers that actually pull students and have their caseload with them in a smaller setting. So they have to develop the language, they have to develop the language. But this is a great article because it says that content based approaches to teaching ELLs is important um, because it improves the content understanding through the development of language proficiency. So, for an example, students have to be able to talk about how those processes work, and through that conversation with the content instruction being as the vessel for their language, hopefully their language skills will grow. And this is just an article to support that claim. All right. And then finally, I would like to talk about um, sharing the classroom. So, on the cultural aspect, we have to create a culture within our classroom that is one, culturally sensitive, but not culturally blinded. Um, so sometimes we see teachers and people say, "Oh, I'm colorblind." No, we don't need to be colorblind. We need to acknowledge that there's differences into our classroom. We need to make our classroom an inclusive environment for ELs by ensuring that teachers provide instructional activities that place an importance on students' lives and interests. So we can do this by allowing students opportunities to just have self expression and create educational experiences that bridge the disconnect between the students' home lives and school. So, having students debate, having students say, okay, for an example, if we're talking about ecology and the environment, allowing a student to make a presentation about the topography of their native land, and also talk about the native and invasive species in that land and how environmental issues from their native country impacts their society, and then we can tie that into our classroom. But allowing students to, one, not mask their culture, but embed their culture into the United States and then into our English language. Finally, I would like to talk to you. This is just enclosed. This is a picture that a group of teachers and myself actually took this massive group of ESOL students, ESOL served students to Kennesaw State University and to the Latino College and Youth Conference. And it was such an empowering event for those students as they were able to just say, hey, I might think I want to go to college. I never thought about it before, but this is a great experience. So actually goal setting and having students understand that there is life outside the K-12 setting and how to be prepared for that is very important. I would like to thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you listening, and also I also enjoy the fact that I was able to record this. Um, Many times in college, it's like write a paper, grad school, write a paper, write a paper. But we also have to be um, orally effective in our speech and communicate ideas to everyone. So I appreciate the opportunity to do so. Thank you.